So let's have a look at the Pan European. What sort of things do you need to look at? Well, basically, these bikes are brilliant. They are brilliantly reliable. The engine is superb. And essentially, there isn't too many things that you have to worry about. What you really have to worry about is that the bike's been looked after and it's in good condition and everything has been done properly. There are a few things that do go wrong with these bikes, but it is quite rare. Looking around, everything is nicely out the way. Got ABS on the brakes, and this bike has got linked brakes. Now, the thing about the brakes, there's nothing wrong with the brakes. The brakes are easy to work on. You can easily fit pads. I mean, look, the pannier is off of this particular bike, and you've got brilliant access to the rear caliper. We've only just put new pads in this particular bike. The front brakes also very easy to get to. You can rebuild the brakes quite easily. There's only one problem with the brakes. Because they're linked, they're quite complicated to bleed through. If you strip one of the calipers down and rebuild the caliper, the actual operation of rebuilding the caliper is not difficult, but bleeding it is. You really have to look through the correct manuals to find out what you're supposed to do. This needs to be angled over at 15 degrees before you bleed it. Underneath the fairing, about here, there's a bleed nipple which you have to bleed in the right order to make sure that you don't get any airlocks. When I've bled these through, we've used the suction method rather than pumping it through normally. So if you find a bike that's got dodgy brakes, spongy brakes or whatever, counter that into the price, because it is involved. If you're mechanically minded, you can probably do it, but if not, you're going to have to take it to a garage, and they're probably going to charge accordingly for the amount of work involved. Another problem, the clutch. So normally, clutch is perfect, there's nothing wrong with the clutch at all. But if you get a clutch that's a bit soft, needs bleeding out, it can sometimes be a problem with the master cylinder. Rarely, but sometimes it can be. Or it can be a problem
actuation cylinder, which lives behind the frame.
And the official recommendation is that you remove the engine to replace it. Removing the engine is not something we want to do, not to replace a cylinder that's held onto the engine with 3 bolts. It can be done, I have done it, where you can remove the cylinder in situ. It ain't easy, but it is possible. The cylinders are 100 quid, but fitting them is involved. So once again, if you find a bike that's got a little bit of a iffy clutch action, be careful, because that could cost you a bit. What else goes wrong with these? Well, pretty much not a lot, unless it's not been looked after. I mean, the obvious stuff like tyres, brakes and all that sort of thing makes no sense to mention, because obviously you're going to be looking at that anyway. These particular bikes, the later ones, don't suffer from corrosion in the way that the ST1300s do, because the swinging arm is aluminium. So it doesn't suffer from the corrosion that the ST11 had, which was steel. The exhaust, although they are a little bit of a pain down inside there with a steel section, if it's There's loads of things you can put on these bikes. Look at this particular bike. Cruise control, phone attachment, sat nav, heated grips, handlebar risers. So just in the handlebar area, look how many different things are on this particular bike. You've got a tank cover, it's got a set of spotlights, set of rear crash bars, somewhere to put his cup of tea. These crash bars are designed for the GL1800, but with the brackets made up specially, fits this bike perfectly. So in the event of an off, saves the panniers and the side of the bike from being crushed or scratched. So really, what do you need to look for? Not a lot really. These bikes are brilliant. As a result, they don't come up for sale that often, and when they do, they're snapped up straight away. The panniers are dead easy to load. Here is the bike without a pannier, and you can see how much room you've got into the back end. You can do quite a bit without the panniers on, but look how quickly and easily the panniers can be refitted. Unclip the lock, slides in position, lock down, and you're on. Perfect, perfect. These bikes come with panniers as standard. I think the top boxes are additional, but most bikes have got top box on anyway. So if you're buying one, it'll probably have a full set of luggage. And the top boxes and the panniers are quite roomy, so you can get quite a decent amount of side box. Will take a normal full face helmet, so if there's two of you on the bike, there's enough room in the panniers alone to put your helmets in, so you can walk around without the agony of having to drag a helmet around with you. Some of the early Pans had screens which were fixed, but most of them have an electric screen, and of course you can fit larger screens so that when you're riding it gives you brilliant protection. So these bikes are superb tourers, and that's why there's so many of them on the road. Fantastic. And it doesn't really matter what year you go for, they're all pretty much the same. The early ones did have a little bit of a problem with regards to the police incident, but I believe that now that's been sorted out, and you can easily achieve high speeds on the motorway in one of these bikes. This particular bike has had a modification to the indicators. Notice that with the ignition on, the lights are on in the indicators as well as the headlight itself, but if it's indicating, it automatically flashes as a normal indicator, so you get side lights as well as indicators. At the rear you can see the lights are on, so watch what happens with the brake lights. So the brake light flashes before it comes on permanently, in order to allow people then to be made aware that you're slowing down. So there's millions of things that you can do with these Pans, but the best thing about these bikes is the engine. Just listen. Turbine smooth. The one negative thing about the Pan is they're heavy. So if you get into a situation where you've got to push them backwards, let's make sure they're flat. So you need to be fairly strong.